Welcome to the Community Building and F2P Games panel, Beyond Whale Hunting. I really hope it's not dolphin hunting. And we're going to be moderated by Mike Thompson, who's a creative writer at Fifth Planet Games. Mike.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming this morning. My name is Mike Thompson. As Scott said, I am the creative writer at Fifth Planet Games. Before that, I served as a video game journalist, most recently as the lead writer at Inside Social Games, where I covered the free-to-play scene in both social and mobile pretty extensively. In the free-to-play development scene, the sexiest users are the whales, the ones who spend thousands of dollars on a game's content. And while it may be tempting to pursue just these high-value players, any successful developer can tell you that they also need to build a thriving community that embraces the content of the game, that doesn't monetize nearly as highly, if at all. So today, these gentlemen here on the panel are going to talk to you about their experiences building and maintaining communities in both the core and casual game spaces. So going right down the line, we have Mike Seago from Gaia Online. We have Josh Nilsson of Eastside Games, Rob Winkler of Fifth Planet Games, Ken Cito of Massive Damage, and Brian Mashinter of Backflip Studios. So let's jump right in. All right, so Rob, first question's for you.
Sweet.
All right, so how did you first build your community and about how long did it take?
We first built our community, actually we started trying to ramp up a little bit before the game was actually launched. We set up forums. It wasn't until the game went live that we really were doing it. I mean, we were a very small, scrappy startup. We did not have any kind of outside funding, so we needed to build a community to actually have a viable business. We went about it by just very much guerrilla marketing. We spent a lot of time on Facebook, adding tons of Facebook friends, going on to other people's pages and talking to them about the game. We would answer questions on our own walls. This was 3.5 years ago, where Facebook was really the only gaming platform for kind of games like ours, which is kind of social RPG. And we really just, there was a couple of us that really spent a vast majority of our time just talking to anyone that would possibly talk to us about our game. And at that time, it really helped set us apart from a lot of the other game developers that would just, throw just about anything up and see if it stuck, and then they would decide to support it or not. So that we came out guns blazing on day one, I think really helped. We talked about that a lot before, that really kind of helped build the evangelists. So we had the people within the first month or so that were as passionate about the game as we were, and they really helped do what we couldn't do, which was spread it around to a lot of different people. So yeah, it just kind of grew from there. I mean, it was viral in a time that Facebook wasn't very viral. It wasn't anything crazy. It wasn't the 1 million users in a few months like it was 6 months before we got on the platform. But it was enough to get our business started and our game community growing.
Anyone else have any insight onto this?
So, very similar to Rob, we also grew our community through Facebook, but we made primarily Facebook games. Our Facebook game, Pop Farm, had a good subject matter that people would be really into. So one of the things that we experimented with and still do to this day is provide and work with to provide incentivized posts for people to like and share, and a reason for them to do that. So kind of gamify the posts a little bit more, add incentives for people to get premium items, reason for them to come to the wall, reason for them to share. We still do some of that stuff to this day. So it's not just more, so here's a game update, go see it. So that's one of the things that if you're building your community and starting out, something you have to think about. The other thing is, I think most of the people on the panel are the same way, is founders themselves, so would be directly looking at feedback, responding to fans, and kind of taking those feedback back to the game design people and saying, people really want this, they want that, and then it kind of engages the fan, and especially with Pop Farm, it makes it feel like the fans are building the game with you.
All right. All right, so looking back, Mike, this will be for you. So what worked when you were first establishing your communities, and what kind of customer service challenges did you encounter in the free-to-play genre?
So I've been working on community-driven games for the past 10 years, starting with Sims Online and then with Fluff Friends, one of the first games on Facebook, and then Gaia Online being one of the largest online forums. And in all cases, it starts with talking to your users and giving them a platform to talk to each other. And when I really think about what differentiates a community-driven game from more of a game that is driven around a different metric, like the monetization-driven design or user acquisition-driven design, a community-driven game is post-launch, you figured out what you want to initially put out there, and then the continued development becomes a conversation with the community. And really, like you're saying, listening to what people are saying, talking to the users, understanding that, seeing what they're saying to each other. But what was one of the major game changers for both Gaia and Fluff Friends, and I'll use the Fluff Friends example, is using the community as a way to encourage people to continue to play with the game, even when they're not playing your game, and allowing them to extend the content of the game beyond what you as the game developer can provide. And one of the ways we would encourage this on Fluff Friends was to tell players that we want them to get outside and take their pets with them. So you can print out your Fluff Friend and post a picture of it on the page, and then we would feature that very prominently. So people could go into, on vacation in front of Mount Rushmore or the Eiffel Tower with a picture of their Fluff Friend out there in the real world. And that sort of extending the content of the game was something that resonated really well with people, and it just snowballed from there, that it became a major aspect of the way that people would interact with the game, through encouraging people to create fan art and then prominently featuring that fan art within the game, through encouraging people to create user-generated films and then hosting a film festival of this content where people love what you've done and what you've created, but want to play with it in new, interesting, user-generated ways. And I think that is one of the key ways that the game can become more than just a game in people's minds and start to encompass their lives.
Go for it.
When we first launched our game, Please Stay Calm, this was about 2.5 years ago, we'd never really built an MMO before, so everything was very, it was a huge learning experience for us. I like to describe our code as a house of cards fortified by spaghetti. So it was, it was one of the most interesting ways to, I think one thing that really helped solidify our community, funny enough, was kind of diving in and dealing with all the issues coming out from the bugs from our initial release. It's interesting to engage with the users themselves, dealing with all these issues, and that's something that they're obviously very passionate about, fixing their account, getting the virtual currency they're supposed to get, or fixing like a certain mission bug. They're motivated to talk to you about it, and you're motivated to fix it. So it was a good way to just kind of dive right in. I had this bad habit of, it was a good habit of diving right into like our global chat system and dealing with the trolls head on. You learn a lot of things, learn how to quickly kind of respond in a very concise, honest manner to people who are very upset, and in a kind of a public forum. I think it's a good skill to have. I think that's what helped establish our relationship with our player base, and that we were not afraid to jump in there and directly address the issues publicly. And I think that really helped just get a lot of evangelists on our side, and a lot of our players that became really, really loyal and felt they owed us in the same degree in the way that we treated them.
Yeah, I think kind of just to piggyback, people just want to be heard sometimes, and there's that internet anonymity where they just rage, and the moment you respond, they're like, oh, well, I didn't mean to be that much of an a-hole. And when they realize there's a real person on the end of that email and that hostility, and that you just want to help them, really goes a long way. And you can really, we've got one of our CS people, customer service people, who's just a beast. loves to turn those people around, loves to take somebody who is mad and make them somebody who's happy. And so it's just it's a special skill set I don't have. So I very much appreciate it in someone else. And then what you were saying about kind of building community through playing with your game. People send us pictures of dragons that they created. So sometimes they just draw, like it's a 6-year-old and draws their favorite dragon from Dragonvale, and then some were like, what if you did this? And what if you did that? And then I'm sure my legal team hates that I would ever say anything that people send us stuff, because you're like, eh. But it's really interesting to see what people do, and they decorate their parks in weird ways, and they send you screenshots of like American flags on 4th of July, and so it's just interesting to watch your community turn what you meant to be this one thing into something different.
Yeah, and to really support that as well.
Absolutely, you have to support that, because you want them to talk to each other and be excited about it.
All right, so that leads us next to games versus platforms. What do you find leads to larger communities and their engagement, the game or the platform that you're promoting it through? Josh, I'll throw that at you.
So we mainly just build on Facebook, but you want to make sure that the game has to stand on its own, and people have to be able to talk about the game on other things other than just the platform. So Facebook's great for that, but there's lots of other places they can talk and converge about. For example, on Popfarm, one of our biggest successes is a fan site called popfarm.info that has, I think it's about 60,000 likes. It's got a more comprehensive wiki than we have. In fact, our lead designer probably won't like it, but I think everyone on his team, probably even he, goes to it for information on Popfarm to find out about the quests and the archives and stuff like that. So you can't really make that yourself and force that on people, but when you see that level of dedication to those, you can't manufacture that, but we try to encourage it by giving them shout outs and stuff like that. So keep that in mind when you're developing and growing your community, that you want to make sure you give people correct tools to talk about it any place. For example, for Candy Crush, they use, I think it's Instagram they use quite heavily, and that works well for them. Pictures and contests through that. So put as many channels out there and encourage that as much as possible, but don't limit people that they can only talk about the game on one place, or don't give them shout outs because they're talking about it on Twitter or whatnot.
So I think we actually learned a lot as we continue to go onto different platforms. One of the big aha moments for us was when we went on Congregate, and they had live world chat next to our game, and it just completely changed the way that people played our game and enjoyed our game. So I think the first thing that we did was like, wow, that's brilliant. We never thought of that. Let's put that on our own destination site. But it really kind of helped us tap into there's different ways to enjoy this game, to consume this game, and let's not limit that. Let's try to meet people where they are. It was something we had done early on with trying to just get users in general, but going and setting up, we have player-made wikis for all of our games, and we kind of do the same thing actually. It's go there, where did that item come out? And it's so much easier to go to the wiki and find out when it was done. But we have forums set up for all of our games. We really encourage interaction there and all the social media outlets. But it really was that live chat that really changed the way that we did things, because people they spent a lot of time in chat, not necessarily even playing the game at that point. And that that platform really just changed stuff for us. So it was pretty cool. It was a really interesting experience.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that idea of having live chat next to your game so players can interact with each other. I think sometimes as a game designer there's this tension where you want to A/B test something, and so you're going to run a sale for some portion of your users, and you feel like, well, if the users are all talking to each other, then some people are going to say, oh, I got a better deal, and why are you screwing me over? And you start to have this hesitation and concern that you need to silo your players' experience and control what they see so that they can't influence each other in these ways that will then come back to bite you. And that's just wrong. Just fight that notion entirely, put it out of your mind. The more you can encourage players to connect with each other and share and care about the game, and even if they're saying interesting things about, hey, it seems like I got a deal and this other person didn't, which rarely to never happens anyway, because that's just players don't talk about how much they've spent on things as a topic. But yeah, it's much better that players can connect with each other and discuss whether it's things they like, whether it's things they don't like, whether it's ways that they can cheat your system. It's still going to engage them further with the content and with other people who love your content than you would ever be able to achieve trying to isolate them.
We ran into that where we ran like a special for Google Play only, because we did some kind of like promotional thing with them, and so it was like 20% extra gems, and there was a bit of hey, where's ours? And I think as long as you deal with them honestly and deal with them kind of fair and equitably as best you can, they understand like sometimes stuff goes on sale. Right,
Yeah.
and sometimes you're not the first in line. So
Just be honest. Just tell them what you're doing.
that's actually the end of the entire thing. Just be honest. Good.
All right, so that leads us to keeping the balance. So, Josh, how do you guys maintain and cultivate your existing communities? And then, on top of that, what are the trade-offs of having volunteer moderators or full-time community managers?
So at ESET Games, we're maybe a little different than some of the other people on the panel. We don't actually have really community monitors per se. It's more in-house, call them community champions that work in-house to do customer support and also do all the community posts and stuff like that. But what we do, we actually had a debate about this, and I think it's split kind of evenly amongst the panel. What we do is we leave our social channels open. For example, on Facebook, we leave the wall open for comments. We leave the other channels that games have locked down because they don't want to deal with the add me and the get free Facebook credits and then people just promoting their own games. We actually think it's better to leave those channels open and have people that are strong in the community, like the people that run the fan sites and stuff like that, to self-moderate, or in times when our game is being down or we've had problems, we had to go and actually fix it rather than be on the wall. We've had people that have stepped up and said like, leave them alone, they're doing the best they can, or whatever. So that's something I'm really interested in learning more about from people on here that do have sort of community moderators, or actually give them a moderator tag or something if that's effective and that works, and how do you police that?
So our game, we have, I think we have about 15 volunteer moderators on Please Stay Calm. They have a special look in chat, which is always fascinating to new players. They go, how come they're blue? And what we found is actually it's as long as you have an established set of rules early on that everybody understands how moderators, what powers they have and how they're expected to behave. We were actually more leaning towards, giving more people moderator status easier than trying to make it like a very hard thing to do. As long as their history in chat seems reasonable, they don't drop too many F-bombs, and they don't encourage kind of trolling behavior.
I'm out.
Encourage trolling behavior, then if they want to be a moderator, we would give them a chance, and then have the other moderators basically vet and self-police, and it's worked out really well. Like, I think those are your first line champions in your game, and they really help solidify the community, because most of them actually work a lot harder than you would expect. There's people on just like 12 hours a day just answering questions. It's kind of crazy, actually. And all we gave them was like free chat. So
I can jump in. So we actually are a little bit different too. That we leave everything open. What we do though is we have 6 full-time either CM or support people. We have a full-time community manager for each of our games, and then we have another kind of a lead CM that bounces between everything, and then another full-time support person. So we found that has helped a lot with the community building over time, because we are very quick to respond to everything. One of the directives we have for the CMs is that every single post in the suggestion forum should get a response, even if it's hey, thanks for posting, hey, that was a good idea, we'll talk about it. That's great. I mean, that we've seen tons of value just from that. Like, hey, I had this idea and I shared it, and you at least saw it. We've said many times before, we look at everything, we don't respond to everything because we just can't. But just that forum in particular, making sure that we're on top of. We've gotten a lot of value from. We do have some volunteer moderators, but anytime you get what you pay for, And so when you're paying them nothing, it doesn't tend to, you know.
In virtual currency, right?
Some of them we have, yeah, but it's not quite the same as having our own in-house stuff. The other exception that we have is we have what are called player councils for each of our games, where we fly a group of players out to our office for a weekend, and it's just like a really intense focus group. We pick people from the community based on a lot of different criteria, but we always have like a free player, we always have a whale, we always have people that are really focused on PvP, and we don't give them this directive, but they always come back from those meetings. You know, they know us, they kind of get it. They have that personal connection. All of a sudden, there's the, you know, the face behind the a-hole, and they all of a sudden, you know, they'll be the ones that will jump on the forums or jump in the, you know, on Facebook walls or do whatever and say, hey, you know what, they're working on it. They know about this. They spend all weekend, all day, every day working on the game. Trust me, they're working on it. So that's helped a lot, and it is putting that kind of face out there to help with the community.
All right. Hindsight. This is where we get to admit what we did wrong. So I know that all of you have stories, so I'm just going to lob that out like a grenade and leave it up to one of you to jump on that.
Made plenty of mistakes.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're talking about the ways that having a strong community can really increase your player lifetime and make players feel more connected to the game, and that's fantastic. And one of the misconceptions, mistakes that you can make is to think that because players love what you're doing so much that they are going to love other games that you create as well, and you can leverage the strong community that you've built for cross-marketing your next game. And in addition to that being wrong, the opposite is usually the case, where if you are doing something that doesn't seem to be directly aligned with the interest of further investing your company's time and resource into this one game that they love, they're going to question what you're doing. And at Gaia, we designed Monster Galaxy, a game that initially launched on Facebook and then went to iOS and Android as well, with the idea in mind that, well, we have millions of people on Gaia, we will instantly have millions of people playing this game and loving what we're building, because we're taking into account that people who love Gaia Online should love this, but it can also extend outside, further beyond Gaia Online. And I think the latter half was true, without a doubt. We designed a game that could extend outside of Gaia Online, but the users within the community on Gaia Online just questioned, why are you building this separate game? Why are you launching a game on Facebook? And you know, that was a pretty harsh lesson for us to realize, that just because they're really passionate about one game that we're building doesn't mean that that is going to result in us building a full portfolio around transferring them between every one of our titles.
Yeah, I'll go. I think one of the biggest mistakes we made on Dragonvale when it comes to community specifically is we weren't ready. We just didn't. Free-to-play was new to us. We hadn't really tried that. We were the old, kind of set it and forget it types. Not entirely. I mean, we did level packs for Ragdoll, and we had Ragdoll Blaster. We had like a good community who were trying to solve puzzles and kind of communicated that way. We just found ourselves unready for the impressive load of emails that we got. I mean, it is a phenomenal amount of contact when it's all of a sudden, it's a game as a service, and people are really invested. People give a shit about their dragons. They care a lot, and so it was just, we were not really ready for it. So my CTO, Dale, was the community manager, customer service, email responder until, this is totally true, CTO of the company was that guy. And then he was like, Mash, handle that. So I did it for a while. And now, now we've got an actual CS department where there's multiple people and they do staggered shifts. So we've got coverage over the weekends, and we just weren't ready. And that was one of the things that was a huge lesson, because we didn't know how to engage. We didn't know what to do. I think we were a little careful, and we weren't communicative. We didn't talk to people right away. We thought we'd scare them off or something. I don't know what the deal was, but I think for us, we were just it was a completely new thing, and so we, it's surprising that the producer says we didn't prepare enough, but we just really didn't think it through and prepare enough. And so if you're going to make a game that's free to play, where you're hoping to have millions of users, you should probably think about how you're going to want to communicate with them, and even how you're going to communicate them on to different platforms. Because how we engage with our Facebook users is different than our Twitter users, than our, the wiki, and the live chat. They're all different. So.
One of the biggest mistakes we did at the beginning, and I think it was related to how we were engaging our players very directly and honestly, and it got kind of very, I guess, relaxed and casual. So one of the things we did that was really bad was we talked about upcoming features all the time. And so they, every time you say something like, oh yeah, we want to build this, they take that as a promise. And I think one of the biggest features we wanted to build was like guild versus guild combat. And we found out that as we were designing it, we needed like 4 other subsystems to be in place to make that really worthwhile. So we're starting to build all these subsystems, and they take a long time, and we really got raked over the coals. It became, anytime we announced any feature, they're like, oh, sure. It kind of created basically a bit of a distrust in our ability to deliver, and so then I had to really kind of be careful about what we talked about and scale. You can talk about coming stuff, but you just have to be a lot more careful about the time frames you give, because if you give any time frames, that is a promise, and you will most likely fail that promise. So it does come back to really bite you in the ass. I think that was the biggest, most painful lesson. So what we do is whenever we have a new feature that is just about to come out, we pretend like it's coming soon, and so we have a crafting feature that's coming out, and we actually put out an announcement page that sounded like it was another one of those fake promises. So it'd be kind of funny when actually we're self-deprecating that way.
So, I could probably spend the rest of the day talking about the stuff that we did wrong and stuff in hindsight that I would have changed. But a couple things specifically to community. Definitely the same thing with the talking about features. Like at the beginning, I honestly think it was not necessarily a bad thing. Again, 3.5 years ago, it was a lot of devs just putting up games and never touching them again. So we did want people to know that we were working on stuff, that we were going to keep pushing forward. At the beginning, we were small, scrappy, working 100-hour weeks, so we actually got stuff out the door. But we kind of stuck with that, and it started to bite us in the ass. And so it was like earlier this year, we made the decree is like, design doc has to be done, tech has to be working on it, or we cannot talk to anyone about it. We do monthly state of the games in all of our games. So we tell you, we do like kind of a little bit of month in review from the month before. Here's what's coming out like this month, but not really too much specifics. But like there has to be a 99% chance that that's going to come out this month for us to be able to talk about it. We never still give dates because we like people to feel like, oh, there's something interesting coming. Hey, we're still supporting the game. We're still here. So definitely, maybe going back 2 years and putting this process in place instead of just a few months ago would have been great. The other big thing in hindsight was just personally getting me off the forum sooner. A lot like Brian, have sometimes a little bit of a volatile personality. I like to call it passionate. But I care deeply about our games and about our company, and I care deeply about our community. And so when someone would attack us or the community, it took a while for me to build that thick skin, but even after that, sometimes people would still get through, and I would just lose my shit, and it was not good. And so generally I had 7-year-old. Yeah. Generally I had the I don't know, enough pause to be able to not put that up on the forums. A couple times I did, instantly regretted it. So that's definitely something I go back. Now we have filters, so every post that I make gets checked by someone else before it goes up. It's the best thing for everyone. Only a few times have I pulled the CEO card. I'm like, I don't give a shit. I'm just putting this on the forums, and it wasn't that bad. But it did show early on, at least, that we cared deeply about what we were doing. I just could have probably used better language and been a little less aggressive with people. So I guess I kind of regret that a bit. But people know. When I make a post, it's usually serious and it's usually direct, which is good. We talk about just being honest with people and being direct.
At least they know where you stand.
Yes. I don't mince words there at all. So, yeah.
So I think there's a couple of themes here going, and a couple of important points that I'm taking from this anyways is, first of all, coming soon and free to play means like it's going to be out in the next 4 to 8, maybe 12 hours. If you want to sleep, it's 24 max. So in one of our games, we've been kind of an old school console web game type of thing we did was we put an icon that said like something's going to be here soon, and that was there for like 4 to 6 months. It just got cut to push, and people were freaking out, and eventually we just removed the icon, and they freaked out because they're like, oh, it's canceled now, and it was canceled, and yeah, it's actually gotten so bad that we've actually been able to turn that around and put those jokes back into Pop Farm assets that have to do with people freaking out about that, and kind of like made fun of ourselves. So keep that in mind. And then the other big thing to that I think is extremely important to think of all your players. They're investing a lot of time, even if they're not paying you money. They're putting all this time and effort and energy, and especially if they have the passion to talk to you about it, that you really got to think these are service-based games now. We have to be great game designers. We have to be great software engineers. We have to be great producers. And we also have to be amazing at customer service. So if you don't know anyone in your studio, or you don't have anyone that does that, then reach out to other industries and do that. We've actually been reaching out and getting our community managers from other industries, and it's worked out really well because they don't they're a little bit less connected from people that are founders and that make the game, and all their whole purpose is just to make people coming in with complaints figure out what the complaints or the problems are, fix them, and then do that little extra to make them feeling amazing. Somebody said, I'm not sure who said it last night at our sort of pre-meeting, what they said, people leave feeling just amazed, like they have an amazing experience. And I think we try to provide that. Really good games provide that. When you make that purchase, you have an amazing experience. When you have a complaint, you should also be turned around by customer support, and it should feel like an amazing experience. I call it the bad hotel room experience. So if you ever get a bad hotel room at a place you stay at, it's happened to me recently, and then the hotel figures it out, you work it out, they get you the right hotel, but then they don't stop at just the room. They'll figure out something that you've told them, like your favorite beer, put it in the room or something like that, and then you're like, I'm gonna stay at this hotel forever. It's awesome, free beer, right? Like I've forgotten about the complaint at that point. So I think that's something every studio really needs to think about, and I think we can all work on that customer support and improve there.
I just want to add something. I totally agree with Josh. I think you need to embrace your mistakes. A lot of the things that you do that, especially in a social RPG type game, everybody knows that you screwed up. So I'll just give you some examples of how we've done this creatively. For example, we put out a feature where, so we have this feature called Outpost, where it's kind of like a harvesting mechanic, where you're grabbing credits or money from a variety of locations in the game. And we decided to put out a feature where, because it was kind of painful to go through all these locations, we had, some people had like 100 different places they had to go to collect stuff. So it was a courier that would go do it all for you, but we charged an excessive amount of money to use this feature. So, he would basically, I don't know. It was just way too pricey, and the feedback was like instantaneous. Like, oh, you guys are just money grubbing, blah 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 blah. So we looked at the metrics and like, you know what, this is way overpriced. So we reduced the price. I don't know, it's like 100-fold. It was just ridiculous. It was a really bad mistake. We didn't really think over it too much. So when we did the price reduction, the picture of the courier who was on his Vespa and a little messenger bag, we basically gave him like black eyes and cast, like he was completely beat up. And I think that went over really well. Everybody appreciated that we basically owned up to the mistake and had this guy look completely beat up, and people thought it was really, really funny. And that's one way to publicly, obviously acknowledging the problem, but also giving something back on top of that. And we did something else where we had this really bad bug where everybody who chats uses chat tokens just to prevent spam. And we had this bad bug where people's chat tokens would just, like, the chat wouldn't go through, but the token would be eaten up. And people I don't know how it started. I can't remember if it was from the community, from us. It started, somebody was like, there's this thing about the chat Pac-Man that would like eat up your tokens. So randomly we decided, once we fixed the bug, actually I'm not sure if we ever really fixed the bug, but there's random chance when you put in a chat message that the zombie Pac-Man, who looks a bit like one of the guys from Penny Arcade, would just appear and you'd have to fight him. But if you beat him, you get a bunch of free chat tokens. And the hilarious thing is we never acknowledged this feature existed, so anybody who said that they saw this were completely made fun of. And it was kind of like an amazing little phenomenon that went through the chat. For the longest time, people thought they were just bullshitting or paint shopping this picture of this zombie Pac-Man. And that was kind of like this, and then everybody tried to figure out how to make it happen. So sometimes the chat screen would be full of people just saying, Pac-Man, 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 trying to make this happen. And that's just one of the things, like, that started as a bug, which I'm not even sure we fixed. And it became a feature, and then it became like this whole urban myth thing within the game itself. So I think you just definitely need to be creative about embracing your failures and making sure that you continue that honest dialogue with your community and just like delivering on top and just being weird and funny and self-deprecating about it, because everybody screws up. Everybody knows that. And if you try to hide it or you try to be like very aloof about it, that doesn't work at all.
All right, so looking forward to the future, what do you see coming down the pipeline in terms of free-to-play games and their communities?
In the year 2000? You sound like you want to talk.
I don't.
Nope.
Yeah. I do. Just I gotta. So I'm predicting the future. I want to.
Yeah, I can jump in a little bit. I do think, and specifically with the future of free-to-play, I do think that the stigma of free-to-play that's been around for the last couple of years is going to start to go away a bit more, especially as we see more of a transition towards free-to-play and console. I think that helps break down some of the barriers. We actually recently did a promotion with Felicia Day and the Guild, and we featured the characters from the Guild in our game. And Felicia Day posted about it on Facebook and Twitter and all this stuff, and go and read the forum, the responses to her posts. And they're generally pretty good, but there's every once in a while a few people like, oh, you totally sold out. This is a free-to-play bullshit game and everything. And it was really great to actually see a ton of people just respond, like just random people. I have no idea who they are. Like, you should try this game. It's actually a lot of fun, and you don't have to. It's not pay to win, and you should just. It's a free game for everyone. Why are you complaining? And it was just, some people were really kind of stuck in that old mode of a few years ago when, it was, well, I think every game's a little bit different, but it was more of a money grab out there, and people were very negative about it. So I think the future's actually quite bright for free-to-play. John Ocatello talked yesterday and talked about that, he doesn't think that free-to-play is going to be the only business model going forward, and I totally agree. And I think, though, that it'll become more prevalent, especially outside of social and mobile that we see right now, and that will help just reduce the friction that we see, because we still don't have great conversion rates across the board. They're really good in compared to the industry, but I think the industry will get a lift over the next 3 to 5 years as this becomes much more standard. So I think that's awesome.
Okay, now I got it. I had to think about it. I think one of the things, maybe for us at Backflip, and one of the things just from being at conferences and listening to people talk, like these fine gentlemen, I think like a lot of folks measure the lifetime value of a customer, and there's dollars and cents, and there's user acquisition, and it's about the analytics and metrics, and that I think there was a very large swell of that, and everybody was trying to figure those types of things out, and I feel like. Companies are starting to also recognize the lifetime value of engagement of the people who don't spend a penny, but they have played Dragon Veil since day one. They're level 45. I met with a developer here who was like, I kind of want to show you my park. I want to show you my Dragon Veil park. I'm like, let me see it. I love that. But he was embarrassed about that. But, and he's one of those that's kind of proud that he bred all the dragons. He didn't have to spend for them. He bred them all. And I think I think you'll see more and more companies start to put some analytics and metrics towards those people because they're these great word of mouth funnels for other people. And so, like, this is beyond the whales, right? I think it's possible that we'll start paying attention to whales of time, not just money, and seeing their value and watching more and more companies start to really focus on those people and make them feel part of the community.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of extend that, I think that it's a common thing to say in a free-to-play game that you're basically just using free-to-play as a marketing technique to get people to become paying customers, and only the paying customers matter. And so that's who you care about, that's who you talk to, that's who you're building the game for, and that's the entirety of your focus on design and development and metrics. And if you really take a step back and just think that a free customer is just a paid customer who hasn't paid yet, and try and encourage them not through coercive techniques, but through collaborative techniques and real community building and understanding what their unique needs are, then it can lead to exactly what you're saying, an increase in the overall goodwill and word-of-mouth marketing for your game, and conversion to paying customers as well.
In the next couple of years, I'm really interested and excited about games growing through the messaging services, Message Me, Line, that sort of thing. And I'm interested in how we can embrace those channels and not only just acquiring users, what everyone talks about, but how we can communicate a little bit deeper with our players, how we can actually have game mechanics that are associated with that, and how we can incorporate that more kind of baked in and organically in gameplay. Just another great way that our fans can talk to each other, and hopefully some of the bigger platforms see that, like Facebook and Twitter, and they see that and they provide those channels. So it's not just a constant channel of game feeds, but it's a constant channel of way to interact with your favorite game, with other people that like that game, without annoying all your friends and having to show Brian all your dragons in kind of a creepy way.
Yeah, less creepy is good. I actually have one more. One of the other things I think that you'll start to see is monetization techniques for different types of players. I think right now a lot of free-to-play monetizes essentially two types of people who like to decorate stuff and people who are impatient. And I think you'll see, specifically, I think you'll see people being smarter about how to monetize people who want to help. I said this yesterday, my mom's not the type of person who's going to go buy a hat, a shiny hat for anything. She doesn't care about that, but she would spend $5 to help me get a hat. And I think you'll see companies finding ways to just kind of the different Bartle types of players kind of find that engagement and find basically how to make a free player, a paying player at some point in a way that actually is compelling and interesting to them, where they don't feel slimy and dirty about it. They feel like, absolutely, I played this game for free and I loved it and I want to help somebody, so here's a couple of bucks.
All right. So now we move on to the audience participation portion of the chat, but I actually have one question that I'm going to throw over to Brian, which is, what happens when you guys succeed from being the feisty indie startup and your community potentially sees you as selling out, as you guys recently joined forces with Hasbro?
So the question is, what's it like in your community when you work for the man?
Yeah, and how do you deal with that?
Got it. Honestly, right now, I think, if I'm being super honest, I don't think our community noticed or cared. For the most part, like, they love their dragons, so I don't know that they pay attention to, like, here at Casual Connect we pay attention to the the movers and the shakers and who's doing what and how is this person. Most of our users kind of didn't notice. Yeah. I mean, we catch some of that, but for the most part, I think they just want to know. I think the same thing that everybody who loves backflip games and are Ragdoll fans and want to know what's coming out next. I think they just want to make sure that we continue to do what we do, which is care about our users, care about making great games, and now we just have the chance to potentially bring an amazing library of IP out at the same time. We're going to continue to maintain Dragon Veil. It's not like it's going to become, there will not be some At least I don't believe so. I got to be careful. But there will not be an Optimus Prime dragon. Just sorry, deal with it.
So long as I get a Serpentor dragon, that's all I care about.
Yeah. So you know, I think mostly, I think our users and players, I think they just want to know that we still give a shit, that we still care, that we are still indie and scrappy. We're still the same company based in the same place, and caring about them. I think that's all they really care about, and so far so good.
All right, so now I'm going to open it up to the floor. Who here has questions?
Hi guys, thanks for that. Two quick questions. So we all agree that community is very important and chat is very, very important. Do you guys do any special activities to encourage people to come into your community, and once they're there, do you encourage them to speak? And if you do, how do you do it?
Well, I think we used to have a quest that asked you to say hi to the via the global chat, and we found out early that most people, they'll do it to fulfill the quest, but they're not actually wanting to engage. So it just filled up the spam, kind of the spam count. So we removed that quest. We find that there's actually interesting different classes of I guess communicators. There's people who live only in the global chat space, and there's people who actually hardly ever speak in global, but they'll speak in guild chat or privately message other people. So you just have to have those channels available to kind of fulfill the different patterns of communication among players.
So we haven't done anything too specific like that. What we do, we have our most valuable real estate for sales in our games is like these banners when you first log in. And so we generally have one of them dedicated to go check out the forums or go check out the state of the game or apply for the council or something that directs them to our internal forums. So we try to build the community that way because we have a lot of, I would say a day, less than 5% of the people that join our forums are actually registered users. So we still have a very low conversion rate, but people are still engaged in their own way because our game has a lot of layers of complexity, so people don't want to talk when they feel that it might sound stupid when they don't understand everything about the game. So what we've done is that we've actually started running contests in our games, and they're just like silly contests. Once was you have to videotape yourself singing a song, the Men of West Coruna, which is a song that we kind of made up. And we've done like costume contests. We've done a lot of different contests. So that we found that actually gets people to convert and actually register and engage in the community way they never did before. There's quite a few of those posts that are the very first posts on our forums. And they've been lurking for 3 years and just never had anything that they felt that they were wanting to contribute. And as soon as they do, we find a lot of times, there's actually somebody on our last council that hadn't really ever been around forever, hadn't joined the forums until she entered a contest and actually won because she just amazing cosplay. And then she started talking to people and felt more comfortable in that space. So it's just trying to, I guess we try to engage people on their own terms instead of incentivizing them in different ways, which, we probably should do more of that because once they start talking, it's just high level engagement. Something that we talked about just a few minutes ago is, an engaged user is a very valuable user, whether they monetize or not.
So Gaia has pretty sophisticated hard incentives and soft incentives to get people to really participate in the community because it's just people who post in the forums are far more connected than people who don't post, and you're fighting the 1% rule of the internet, or the 1990, however you think of it, that 99% of people are just consuming content and 1% are creating content. And so to get people over the hump of creating content on Gaia, it's threefold. One is directing new users to a chatterbox form where anything goes, and you can just say bump on a thread and you will earn a flashy achievement for that. And you will also receive virtual currency, and in our system it flags that a new user has posted for the first time, which will put it into a queue for a moderator to then reach out to them and say, thank you so much for making your first post, you're well on your way towards being a full-fledged member of our community. And I think that whole notion of heavily emphasizing people getting involved and speaking up and feeling like they have a voice in this game, it has been just really critical to the overall success of the product.
It's actually really hard, and it's really hard to. It's really hard to. You can't really. For us, anyways, it's really hard on Facebook and mobile to incentivize people and then get good feedback back. What you actually want to do is just provide the tools and as many different tools and platforms as possible, and then encourage that organic growth when it does happen. And it's honestly different for each game that you do, and each platform of each game that you do. The communication channels are going to differ, so try lots of stuff out.
I believe we're out of time. However, we can all step off the stage and you can come talk to any of us, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for your time, everyone. We really appreciate it.